Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the Laser Model Guy. What I want to do in this video is start to build the fuselage of the Dixie, which is the plane that we're designing. But before I do that, I'd just like to show you what I've done with the wings. I've made the other wing now, and I've set the dihedral against the plywood dihedral insert that we had. Now I've made a couple of modifications. I felt that at the centre of the wing, these joins here might make this a weak part. So I've filled these in on this prototype, and on the original plan and on the components on Lightburn, I've changed these. So this is now one piece of trailing edge that goes all the way along to there, and these bits are now a part of a single piece. So that's the first thing I've done, and I'll just, as you can see on the Lightburn plan there on display. Now, the next thing I've got to do before I can cover these, I'm going to put the servos in. So I just want to show you how they're going to work. Into these shapes that we've built, they just fit straight in there, just like that. And what I'm going to do with these, in order to fasten them in, I'm going to use a very small bit of hot melt glue on either side just to hold them in place. And then when you look at the other side, this is how they will look. So we've just got our horn sticking out the bottom there, or the actuator sticking out the bottom, and the aileron will have its horn in place just like that, and that will sit right there and be operated by this. So that's where we're at with the wings. I'm going to now put those in place, and then I'm going to start construction on the fuselage, and I'll show you all that in just a minute. So this is the plan of the fuselage, and we're going to build it on this plan. Now, I've been asked a couple of times, how do I protect the plan from glue sticking to it? And to be perfectly honest, I don't normally plan to use these plans more than once. So generally I would just try to be careful and get as little glue on it as possible. But having said that, for this fuselage now, what I'm going to do is we'll follow best practice, which is to put a sheet of cling film or very thin poly over the plan, and that will protect it. So this is what you would do if you were intended to reuse the plan, or even just to save the plan and preserve it. So we're going to build it straight on here. I'm going to start with this top of the cabin. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit this. This is one of the longer runs, and it's quite chunky balsa. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that on in the direction it goes in, and I'm going to then pin it and leave it for a short while to set before bending it round to form the top of the fuselage. Just make sure that we're well stuck there. Okay, so next, what I will do while I'm waiting for that set, because I want now to put the bottom piece in, what I think I'll do is I'll just cut a couple of these shapes that are going to, or a couple of these pieces that are going to form the side of the cabin, and then we'll be able to come back and complete the rest of the side. So that will sit there, and then our former F1, which is our plywood former, I'll just break that out of there now. just clean that up a little bit, and then that will sit right in there and give strength to the fuselage. Okay, with those three in place, that's more or less the space below the cabin, and I'm just going to leave that a little longer to set before we bend that round. Now to put this, I want to put this piece in now, and this is going to form the what would be the windows of the cabin. But before I place it, although we've got it marked on the plan, what I want to do, just in case there is any tiny variation at all where I've placed things, I want to use this former to position this end on each end. Put it in place, and then just use the former to make sure that we are bang on where we want to be, and that is absolutely perfect just there. So the plan is absolutely spot on. I'll just leave that to set, and then we'll come back to it and put the other piece in, and I'll use former number 2, which is going to go at the back to help with positioning that, just to make sure that we don't have any problems. Okay, so what I've done is I've pinned this now along the curve that it needs to follow, so that's in place. Now with the bottom longer runs, what I've done is I've used steam to curve them, and all I'm going to do with the bottom longer run is put it on, fasten it against these 3 across the bottom, and then I'll be able to adjust this to match perfectly. And so there we go. So you can see how that's going to follow the line around. Okay, I've just popped former number 2 in there just to make sure that we're exactly correct and that this is all going to fit together nicely when we're done. I'll put these 2 in now, and there's one. There's number 2. So we'll just let that set now. So with these now in place, what I'm going to do is start working on this this bottom longer run here, and I've cut this piece to size, so I'm going to fit that in, and I'm going to start making that curve along the bottom. Piece will just fit in nicely there, and then we can carry on with bringing that up. So I'll carry on doing that, and all I'll do is I'll cut the piece to fit the plan, and then I'll bend this longer and up until we reach this point here, and then I'll bring you back and show you how that looks. So that's all these uprights put in, and we've come to the end here. What I'll do in a little while is I'll trim that off, and then we'll build the next side on top of this one. And you saw as this was being fitted how the former which will hold the wheel, the back wheel, will come down here and it'll be bound. Okay, so that's one side done now, complete. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pins out and I'm going to build the other side right on top of this one, so I know they're both identical. Now I've already shaped the bottom longeron, and I'll be using that to, you know, to shape to build the bottom. But what I want to do is I want to use steam now, just to put a slight curve on this top one, because I did find it was a little bit of a strain on the pins, and it was quite difficult to get that a good shape with that. So this is what I'm going to use. It's a little steamer, and it's just switched on now, so it's just coming up to the boil. But all I'm going to do is put a little bit of pressure on the wood where I want it to bend, and then I'm just going to hold it right in front of these nozzles here when they start to produce the steam. And there we go. So all I'm going to do is just put a little bit of pressure on the wood, and then, okay, so let's put a nice curve on it, and I think that'll just do nicely for that top bit there.
But before we take the pins out, the one thing that we do need to do is put these diagonals in, and the reason that we put those in is to give rigidity to the side of the frame, so that it you know, so that it holds its shape properly. So just put those in, and then now we can just let that set a few minutes, and then we'll whip the pins out and make the second side.
So that's the second side done, and it's lying straight on top of the first one. I've taken all the pins out, and these are now we're now able to separate those. So the next thing for me to do is, using formers F1 and F2, I'm going to put those onto this side of the fuselage. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to just, where these slots are, they'll just fit nicely straight on there. And then I've got this piece of wood, and I've checked that this corner is perfectly square, so I'm going to use that to make sure that we are absolutely upright, so that when we come to put the two sides together, they'll be a perfect fit. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is run a bead of glue down the side and into these notches. I'm going to stick those on. I'll stick that one on, and then this one in exactly the same way. I'll put that where these slots are, will fit straight on, and then using this square edge again, I'll make sure that that's absolutely upright, so that you can see that it's perfect, so that when we put the two sides together, it'll be a perfect match. Okay, that's what I'll do now, and I'll show you what that looks like in just 1 minute. Okay, so that's both of those in. What I'm going to do now is leave that to set for a while, and then when that's quite firm, I'm going to put the other side on, and then we can start using the plan here to measure our cross braces and put those in along the top and then work towards each end as we bring the aeroplane in. Okay. And so with a little bit of glue applied, the other side is now on, and I've just clamped it in place just to keep this join here very, very tight, and this one on this side as well, just so that you know, so we get a really good connection there. Well, that's the overall shape of the fuselage now that we can see coming together. I'll just leave that to set, and then we'll be able to start putting some of the cross braces in. Okay, that's the nose all constructed. What I'm going to do now is fit the dashboard, and the way I'm going to fit that is I'm going to just put it in just like that. And now if I put a piece of, I'll just take it that way, if I put a piece of 1/8 balsa straight down the centre and clip it into place, it'll show me where this needs to be. So if I just come in there like that and then turn it up, and that's the angle that I want the dashboard at, so that the top of this just smoothly fits in, and then I'll be able to cut that down, and we'll have a nice smooth end, and then the other 1/8 balsas will go along there, 1/8 balsa strips, and that will form the shape for our nose. So I'll go ahead and glue that in, and then I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so that's the dashboard in, and you can see the angle there that it creates, and what that means is that when we put the covering film on, there'll be a windscreen coming up, sloping back to the top there. Now that's more or less all I want to do with the fuselage at the moment. There is one small modification that I've decided. Instead of using the former at the back there to put a wheel in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a skid instead at the back, so that will slope down underneath, and when the airplane lands it will use that skid rather than a back wheel. The reason for that is to reduce the weight at the back end, so that we are in a better shape to get our centre of balance right, or our centre of gravity. I've altered that on the main plan as well. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the additional stringers along the nose to get that nice shape, and then I'm going to make the tail plane, and so that will be the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer, along with the rudder and the elevator. So I'm going to do that fast forward so that you can watch the whole process very, very quickly. So that's both these components made, and there's the elevator, which will fit onto the back of the horizontal stabilizer, and here is the rudder, which will go straight on the back of the vertical stabilizer. Okay, so that's the fuselage completed, and I've done the tail and the fin as well, or the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer, along with the elevator and the rudder. And I fitted the motor when I put in the second former there, and I've also now put in the electronic speed controller, which I've just tucked inside for the moment, but that'll sit on a platform in the main compartment here. Now, about the centre of balance, or the centre of gravity, when I put these components all on the back here, with the motor in, the centre of balance is about there. With the motor in, you can see that we are very nose heavy. But when I put these components on the back, and I'll just balance them on for now, so they'll all be there. When I come back to where the centre of gravity should be, you'll find it's around about perfect. So I'm really happy with that. Now what that means is, if I've got a platform in the bottom here, the battery, in order to maintain that, will sit right below that centre of balance, which tells me that I'm now okay to fit a platform in the bottom. I'll fasten the ESC onto that, or the electronic speed control onto that. The receiver will be fastened onto that platform, and the battery will also sit on Velcro right in the middle of that platform. So that's enough for today. That's all I'm going to do for now. In the next video, what I'll be doing is I'll be fitting the platform, or I'll show you where the platform is and how all the components are fitted, and I'll then be covering the aircraft with its film cover. And once I've done that, we'll be able to take it out and see if it flies, and I'm sure it'll be great. So thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.